Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Coffees for Closers. It's me and James today. I apologize if the audio isn't up to scratch. I am moving house right now, so it's been a little bit crazy. I'm actually sitting in my car recording this on my phone.
Yeah, I'm in my regular spot, but decided to switch the camera off as well since Matt's got his off, so you don't have to look at my head, as my mustache is currently back.
This will probably be our highest rated episode on YouTube.
Probably, right? Because you can't see us. It's funny, my mustache is back for no other reason than with my thumb injury, I'm just not confident shaving with my left hand yet. I think I needed probably another week or two before I got the balls to do that.
I haven't shaved for years.
Yeah, but I get no facial hair outside of the mustache, so it's probably not needed at this stage, you know? But, yeah, it's funny, so.
Alrighty. Today's episode, what we're going to go over is scripting and sort of elements that we think are important in scripting, and then talk about one of the programs that just finished, that we just did, called the Congruency Academy. So if you guys want to stick around, hear that. If you're listening on YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. If you're listening on Spotify or Stitcher or wherever else, please don't forget to give us a sub and make sure you comment or give us a review. Just do something. Do some engagement. Let the algorithm gods know that you are with us. All right, guys. Cue the intro.
Much appreciated.
If you listen to this podcast, you will make your first $1 million within 3 years. I'm going to repeat that. You will make $1 million within 3 years of the first episode you listen to. We don't want pikers. We're not here to save the manatees. We're here to make podcasts. You really want this. You listen and review.
Put that coffee down.
All right, so let's talk about the Congruency Academy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, where do we want to start? You know, toot our own horns with some of the amazing results we've been getting, or just give guys that weren't involved a bit of a baseline on what we covered?
Well, the Congruency Academy was essentially an idea that we had to pay for the office.
Yeah. We did just that.
the office is going to cost like $150,000, and I was like, man, I really don't want to not take dividends. So, like, let's just figure out a way to pay for it. And we honestly came up with it in in a couple of hours. And we're like, yep, sweet, let's do this. Yep. Then from there, I reached out to Eli. I was like, hey, we're going to do this thing. Do you want to help us do the events? And I was like, we'll start an event. We'll do this kind of stuff. But I was like, I've developed a lot of social clout over the last, year. I think I kind of ran a bit of it dry, to be honest. But
you what, sorry?
Kind of ran a bit of it dry. It's how social clout works, right? Like, you do a lot of good things for free for people, and then you can kind of cash that in. You can cash it in all at once, or you can cash it in dribs and drabs. I think we cashed it in.
All of it in.
I think we went everything on black. So yeah, sort of cashed that all in, and then from there we were able to generate like $150,000 in about 5 hours, which is great. And then we delivered that with 12 hours of content. So we were paid, roughly $12,000 an hour, which is a great hourly rate. It's a living anyway.
It's almost my hourly rate, so.
Yeah, almost. Yeah. I mean, we took a bit of a hit, but
yeah. It's
but basically that's basically how we work too. Like, whenever we want to do something, we just sit down and go, okay, like, what do we need to do in order to fund that? And then we do that.
Yeah. I mean, it was either we do that or we go with my idea and walk into the casino and put $50K on black. So we didn't think that was overly responsible.
Down for doing that as a YouTube video.
Yeah, okay, all right. When we've got $50K that we could just throw around.
Probably do like 20. I'd be down for going and putting 20 on black. Okay. That's fucking see what happens. You know what I mean? But
yeah, all right.
It's for a ridiculous video.
So, what are you guys willing to buy to pay for it? No.
Yeah. We should sell 20 grand worth of T-shirts and then we're good to go.
Yeah, sweet.
Yeah. No, but the Congruency Academy essentially was like the one thing that I think that we've done particularly well that separated me from a lot of the other sales trainers or sales guys is like the way that I tell stories and the analogies and all that kind of stuff. Like, it's very natural. It's kind of how I talk anyway. I like to, because I'm a very visual learner, so I like to give visual references to people in order for them to help them learn, because that's how I learn, right? Yeah. And so, because I was doing lots and lots of sales calls, I was obviously like, the key thing with a sales call is like, you have to get the person to shift their perspective. Yeah. Like, if they're stuck in a rut, like especially with fitness, So it's like if they live a certain way that causes them to be overweight and unhappy and unfit, it's like that's every single decision that they've ever made has caused them to be that. So in order to get them to not be that, we have to change their perspective on life. And so it's like, how do I do that without going, you're the problem?
Yeah.
Right? Because as soon as you do that, it becomes a very unproductive conversation.
Yeah, and they just feel like they're being attacked. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I developed a lot of methodologies where I could get people to understand what they were doing, realize they were the problem, but through having like an aha moment, kind of, that's what I'm doing. Right. But like very non-combatively through stories and all that kind of stuff. And then as I got into high ticket, it seems like nobody else is kind of doing it. And so it kind of became one of my things. And it was like hooks and reframes and stories and analogies. And so we just created a course around it that went for 6 weeks. And it seems like the guys, or most of the guys, have had a very good result.
And during that 6 weeks, we really had the intention to, one, not just give people the stories that we utilize in our scripts and analogies, but allow them to develop their own and go through the process that we go through on each account to build specific stories, specific analogies, each designed to pick and choose when to use the situations for them to overcome a specific, or well, to pre-handle a specific objection.
And that really what it broke down to. It was just a cheat code of like, well, if I say this at like this point, it usually puts me in the best position to be able to handle this at this point.
Yeah. Because they're stuck in a logic trap. They've got a different perspective on how to look at that, and they're involved in the hero's journey and want to be the person in that story who overcome the problem that they currently have.
Exactly. Like when you watch Thor, you're like, man, if I was in Asgard, I'd be Thor. You know, it's like you put yourself in that position. So it's just really about, yeah. And so anyway, without getting too deep in the weeds, I have heaps of YouTube videos on that. And, you know, you can go and the closing code, and you can then, there's a bump sell on the closing code for like $50, and you can literally buy a 5-hour masterclass about me talking about it. Right. So
there you go.
So yeah, you can just go do that. But yeah, so, and I think we have like 4 podcasts about that particular subject. There's one called Stories, Reframes, and Analogies. It's like our second most popular podcast of all time. Go and look at that. But anyway, so we developed a course.
I forget what we talk about on here, right?
I know. In like 2 years, it'd be like, no, it's a great idea. We'll do it on Stories and Analogies. Anyway, so yeah, so you can go see all that stuff. But yeah, so we just developed a course around that. It was a 6-week curriculum where it was like, we'll teach you how to write your hooks. Now we've now got that curriculum, so I'm pretty sure the plan is now we're going to have that as like a bump sell of the back end of closing code, so people can buy that as like a, you know, a $297 one-off or something like that, or a $497, whatever. We'll figure it out. And now we're going to the next phase of it, which is like, well, scripting, which is, so that's a bit of context on the Congruency Academy. We had people that went from having like 2 sales a month to having like, you know, one of the guys was fucking, I don't know if you heard this morning, but one of the guys, Brian Savage, great guy.
I came in a little bit late this morning, but
so when he did the program, the first payment he put down like $1,000. It put him into negative.
Ouch.
Right? He today has 25 grand in his bank account.
That's mental. That's a big result.
Like, and he's been doing this for a while, and he was living with his mom and all kinds. So like, he's been slugging through this, and he sells his own program. Like, he has his own coaching program and stuff like that. I don't know I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but yeah, man, like, he's been trying this for a while, and it just hasn't been able to crack it. And it's like, he came to the mastermind, like, put balls to the walls, fair play to him, like full balls to the walls. I think it was like, might have even been $700, and it put him in a negative. And now 6 weeks later, he's got 25 grand in the bank. I was like, man, that's fucking awesome. That is so good.
Yeah. And that was really the intention, because part of that Congruency Academy was not just the stories and reframes, but it was also, that's one of the major things that we teach at Sales Sniper outside of other sales trainers. But it's all about becoming congruent with oneself. And, you know, we had James Cann on talking about health and fitness and stuff like that. And a lot of the stuff revolves around how to one, get consistent on those sales goals by applying the little things in day-to-day life that are going to allow us to turn up to each call with the best ability to replicate one of those scripts and replicate the results time and time again. And I think that was like outside of doing the stories and stuff, that was the biggest thing for a lot of the guys, at least from the feedback that I've got directly, was it was getting out of the nest and not being baby birds and getting after it, getting those referrals, really following up old leads and getting them back on the phone, just with that tenacity to get more bookings into the calendar to make more sales.
Yeah, and a lot of it was just like, I think sometimes people just need to know it's possible.
Yeah.
And so like a lot of the time, just by like, and man, like if there's I would love to hang out with like the guy who's running a better sales team than our sales team. Like, and I'm sure there are, like there has to be.
No doubt. Yeah.
And I would love to meet that guy and be like, what the fuck are you doing?
Yeah.
Right. Because like, I just looked at the new sales form notifications. Like we're averaging 10 a day this month.
Yeah. It's getting crazy. Yeah.
Right. And so like, it's between $200,000 and $250,000 a day in sales. That's what we're averaging. And so it's like, okay.
Outside of Sales Sniper stuff, right?
Yeah. Because we don't have a new sales form notification set up for that yet. So that's just like, that's all the new sales coming through. And I'm just like, holy shit. I was like, man, like sometimes like people just need to know it's possible. And then their whole perspective shifts and they start doing other stuff. So when I tell sales guys, no, you can make your own leads. They're like, what? Yeah. I'm like, yeah, that's how you do it. And they're like, oh, I didn't know that. It was like, it was like Angelo. And again, I want to toot my own horn. Angelo went from $12K a month to after the third month of me coaching him, 73,000 euro.
Yeah.
And it was because like he learned how to go out there and just get it done. Oh no, I don't even need leads. Like at 7th level, like we do the sales for Jeremy, right? And we also own part of that company. So basically, like we are 7th level. But like we don't get leads. We don't. I wish we did. Don't get me wrong. We're paying to get someone to get us leads, but right now it's just not working. So we haven't had consistent lead gen for months. Yep. But we're making more and more and more and more sales every single month.
Yeah, we hit a record month this month with like 4 book calls through a funnel, which is it's really just testament and perspective that sometimes marketing doesn't work. And would you rather not get paid, or would you rather get after it and make it happen? You know,
that's exactly right. Like, yeah, you can sit back and fucking bitch about the lack of leads, or
quality.
You can just go out there and fucking figure it out. And like, I know for me, it was like, I think when I was doing full-time selling, I think like the consequences of me not selling were drastic because I was funding the whole company. Like I was funding everyone. And so like, yeah, other guys were making sales, but like there was one point I was easily 80-90% of the revenue.
Yeah.
Right. And so it was like, if I didn't figure it out and if there wasn't many leads, it was like, fuck, I better figure this out. And so I just started dialing people.
Yeah. I remember having many phone calls with you through the day. How many sales you made today? Oh, none. Okay. We'll get some fucking leads. Start calling, doing follow-ups because we're relying on this, you know? Like if we're going to make this happen, like we have to start somewhere and this is the place to start. So let's figure it out and then we can replicate that for clients.
Yeah, man. It was crazy. Some of the invoices we sent were pretty big.
Yeah. Some of them were also very small by comparison to what the ones we sent now.
Oh, yeah. The ones we sent now are much bigger, but, you know, it wasn't just me by my lonesome. But yeah, man. So I think like once people kind of figure out like, hey, you can go out there and get after that. You don't need a degree in marketing. You don't need to know how to do paid ads. Like there are spheres of influence in which, you know, the business that you has, whether no matter what type of business, like there is pools of people that know about it. Yeah. And that's all you need. Then you just got to go out there and find a problem and then bang, you're good to go. But I think, you know, in segueing into that, it's like then once you get them, you got to have a good script.
Yeah. But before you do, I just want to touch on one more point to give perspective to people. You can also build a team, right? Because now Matt probably contributes to about 5% of our income. Let's say if I didn't factor in the ROI from the videos and the content and stuff, but from directly making sales, it'd be 5% or less of the income is generated by you now because we spent the time to figure stuff out, put the systems, built the infrastructure, and built a team and focused on team first. And literally anyone on our team could replicate that for themselves if given the time and direction correctly. So it is possible for the guys listening that have teams or have small teams that want to grow it. Like in 12 months, it can be a very, very different story if you strap the boots on and tie them up tight, you know?
Oh yeah, I mean, fuck, dude, you can mediocreize. Like that guy that we were talking about today, who we did business with like a year ago, and he was like, "No bullshit, those guys don't know what they're doing, and they're not successful because he obviously hadn't been following us." And showed the videos and was like, "Oh, fuck."
Yeah, I had a good laugh about that.
Guys are killing it. And there's a long way to go. You know, we are meeting with Bradley today because we're going to start doing some sales for him, which is fucking crazy. Like, I mean, what was he, like the second most influential person in sales? It was like Grant Cardone, Bradley, Jerry Acuff for the top 3. And then Jordan Belfort was number 4.
Yeah, I mean, I don't remember off the top of my head, but it seems pretty correct.
I think yeah, and it was just like, it was just crazy that like I was showing him stuff that he'd never even thought of. I was like, no, this is how you do this.
Yeah.
Like, that's how you do that. I was like, yeah.
And that's just business acumen. It's not often that you get, I mean, and I don't mean to disrespect anyone, it's not often that you get top of the table salespeople that are top of the table business guys and top of the table business guys that are top of the table sales guys. It's there's a lot of it out there, don't get me wrong, but in most cases, most people develop one of those aspects better than the other.
Yeah, for sure.
It's a different personality types that are stronger in those.
Yeah, no, I totally. Yeah, 100%. But yeah, like sort of going back into like the scripting component, it's like so the next part of Congruency Academy is all going to be about scripting. If you guys do want to know and you listen to this, you know, you can send us an email. You can go onto our Facebook. You can go on Instagram, DM.
Slide into those DMs.
You guys can figure out how to get in contact with us, right? It's like, it's not that difficult. And then so the next part is going to be about scripting. Now, scripts are important, but I have a little bit of a different view where like, I'm not as fussed about the words and I don't want people to like memorize the words, right? I want them to understand the principles and the concepts behind why it's laid out the way it is and what you're trying to get out of each question and section.
Yeah, so the intention behind.
Yeah, the intention is so much more important because that's what stops you from getting lost.
Yeah.
So like if you memorize a script and someone throws you a curveball, which is every single sales call, then like you end up in this position where like you either sound like a robot and you're trying to get back on track and you're like, it doesn't compute, right? It's like it's not a 1 or a 0. Or you just end up abandoning the script, going off tangent, and then getting an objection, like think about it at the end, or money or partner because you haven't locked anything up tight enough because you're just going rogue.
Yeah.
And so like that's really what happens. And, you know, too many people want me to write their scripts. And it's like Ryan McCormick, he's like one of our sales guys. He's like, hey, I got a bunch of people who want to pay you to write their scripts. It's like a few grand. I'm like, no, I'm not doing that. It's like, but like, it's like, take it like 20 minutes. I was like, yeah, I know. But like, yeah, it's great. 20 minutes, $3.5 grand. Like I'm all about it, but it doesn't do anything for them.
Mm-hmm.
And then all they're going to do is say, oh, I went to Matt Ryder and his script doesn't work. Right. It's like, well, yeah, of course, because you don't fucking understand the things that you're being asked, things that you're being told to say.
You're just copying words off paper without the context behind it.
Yeah. And like, you know, don't get me wrong, it's probably better than not following it. Right. But it doesn't really benefit me, doesn't really benefit them, which is the really important thing. Like, yeah, it benefits me in a way that it gives me money for doing something I find very easy. But like, I just don't, it's like teach a man to fish and you'll feed them forever. I'd rather spend the time, like it's going to be $1,500 a month, Aussie. It's 2 sessions a week. So it's like for 8 sessions, you get $1,500, or you can just pay me $2,000 for 1 session. Like you're better off doing it this way, right? Like you'll get more information out of me. I guarantee it. Because the way that I teach scripts is like ubiquitous across all offers. Like I'll teach you how to do it, but like very little of it will be talking about your offer because I don't really talk about the offer very much in the script.
Yeah.
Right. So it's like, it doesn't matter. What matters is understanding the journey that you're taking someone through.
Yeah, totally. And context is super important. The context could get you in a lot of trouble either way. And that written on paper without the context of the way that you said it and the pre-emphasis and the post-emphasis makes a very, very large difference and could land you in jail with a, you know what I mean? And that actually brings me to another point. I had this discussion with someone today where they pull out certain phrases or a certain paragraph within a script, they nail that part, but they don't realize that just adding in that particular aspect of a script to that call doesn't do anything because the intention's not there. But what's important is, let's say if you have a sentence that you structure, then the major important things of having that hit home and having that get the desired outcome for the reason you ask that is the pre-frame question that you ask right before that paragraph, and then the post-frame question that you ask right after. Because the 3 sentences together, or the 3 questions that you asked, all gelling together creates a further elicit and gets the response that you designed those questions to do. But if you pick either 3 of those specific questions and ask them on their own without the relevance of the other 2 there, it doesn't make sense and it doesn't come across right, because it's the epitome of just like taking a random book, reading one paragraph from a random page in that book and not understanding what happened to that story.
Yeah. And so like, that's why like when I teach it, I try and get very conscious of not going too in the weeds.
Yeah.
Because like I've actually found that the more I understand it, sometimes I find it more difficult to articulate what I'm trying to say.
Yes.
So like I can actually see why some people that I know of don't teach it very well, because their understanding is like they're trying to convey what is very complex things simply. And that's just not always easy. So that's why I like one-on-one with experienced guys, because I can go very, very meta and very detailed and they understand what I mean. Like when I coach Sean Ray, I might even ask him, I won't even pay him something if I can like release the 12 weeks of coaching that I've done with him. Because it's like, it's a sales guy with 10 years experience who's good at what he does, who understands it and is intelligent, and who wants all the nitty gritty stuff. Like he wants to understand the psychology behind every question and the intent behind every question.
Yeah.
And so like my conversations with him are very, very technical. It's like listening to 2 mechanics talk about an engine, like that's what it's like. And so like it'd be really interesting to use some of them, because it's the most fun I've had coaching somebody ever.
Yeah, nice.
It actually gave me a much better understanding of some of the things that I was doing, because he was so good at asking questions about what I was doing.
Yeah.
So, which is when I actually realized that, how I was talking about the bridges with the objections. It's like, and everything was on our previous podcast. It was like, don't worry about the objections. Like, just worry about being good at getting people to give the objection that you want.
Yeah.
Right. And I didn't realize I was doing that until he really probed me on it. And I was like, well, this is what I'm doing. Well, no, he just asked me a bunch of questions. And I was like, well, this is what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that's what I'm trying to do. They're like, oh, yeah, that's what I'm doing.
You gave something a title to a concept that you had that you never articulated because you never thought about it.
Yeah, exactly. It's just something that I always do. It's like
I do it all the time.
Same bridge. Oh, that makes sense, because we all make decisions based on our perspective. Like I say that in every sales call, because it's just like, oh, well, now I know where I'm going.
Yep.
Like it's a good reset point for me. So yeah, so that was really interesting. But yeah, so we're scripting, like what we plan on doing over that 8 to 12 week course is sort of, I want to go into each phase and probably spend like a week in each phase.
Yeah.
Just really understand, like the first week will be going over the entire script as an entirety, so people can kind of see like what it is when you put the whole thing together, and then do that alongside a live sales call, like like a recording, and go like, okay, like, can you hear the transition? Can you hear why we now transition? Can you hear if that is the real answer? Is it the fake answer? Like learning how to listen for if people's answers are genuine. Not if they're lying, but if it's like, if you ask someone how much weight do you want to lose, and they say I want to lose 10 pounds, but they really want to lose 20, they're not lying when they say they want to lose 10.
They just don't understand that they want to lose 20.
Yeah, they need to realize they want to lose 20. Yep. Or they know they want to lose 20, but they don't feel comfortable saying it. But it's still not a lie. It's just a partial truth.
Yeah.
And so
it's a lie coming from a place of misinformation on the the prospect's behalf. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because if you tell someone your real goal, then all of a sudden you become vulnerable and then they can become uncomfortable. Also, when you say your real goal, you're more likely to be held accountable to doing it, which not all people want, right? And so being able to hear that tonality and then being able to know when you're not going to get it, when you think you should get it, and knowing how to get it later.
Just a thought idea that I had. Sorry to interrupt you there. It would be really good as well going in, listening to those calls and saying, hey, the intention of me asking this specific question was this. Let's see if they gave me that response that I was looking for. If they did, great. Here's why. If they didn't, what could I have done to improve that? And that's like a learning tool that the people that we coach, like I ask them to go into the perspective of when they evaluate their calls is ask those specific questions when they're doing it. Is like, did I get the desired outcome from asking this the way that I asked it with the specific words that I used? If the answer is no, then figure out why and change it until you get the desired outcome most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's super helpful and insightful when you start listening to calls and then asking about intent for each question. And because like the thought process, like I can tell when someone's going to be a good salesperson simply when I understand like when I know where they're going with it. If they start, because execution is one thing, thought process is another.
Yeah.
So if somebody asks the right questions, but they ask them in a stupid way, that's so easy to fix.
Mm-hmm.
If their thought process is wrong, that's going to take so much longer to fix. Like we took on a guy, Steven, and when I listened to his calls, I was like, oh, I know exactly where you're going. Yeah. Like your thought process is perfect. There's like your tonality sucks and it's good now. And like that's really hurting you. And your execution is not eloquent, but that can easily be fixed. Right. And so like this is going to be a fucking breeze. And that dude's doing about 55,000 a month.
Yeah, right.
Now he was doing about 35,000 a month. Now he's on about 55 to 60,000 a month in comms. And he's based in Australia. So for all you Aussies out there, whinging and bitching, there's no money here. There's plenty. Right. So yeah. And so it's just like, but sometimes I listen to calls and I'm like, where are you going?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't understand, like, why haven't you heard that? Why haven't you picked up on that? And why are you not trying to do this? And it's like, my way is not necessarily the only way, but it's like, if I just cannot fathom where you're going with it, like, that's when it's like, fuck, I have to try and retrain this person's brain to be able to like listen.
Yeah, you need to train the thought process as opposed to the skill set, right? And it's funny because right now, like I can listen to people's calls and majority of the time let them know what objections they're going to get.
Yeah.
Like before we get to that part. And I know you can do it too. So it's interesting to teach someone how to grasp the thought process and the attention as opposed. And that's why I think like word for word scripts don't work, is because you miss out on the conversation because you're focused on the specific words that you have to say and the way that you have to say them rather than having a conversation. And that's why scripting for intention and process as opposed to word for word works better. And a lot of the people that are fully against scripts would be far better off if they had scripts, but scripts in the way where it was more of a process and a guideline as opposed to a written say exactly this.
Yeah, and like there's a combination of the two, right? Because like when I write scripts, obviously I want them to say the words on the paper.
Yeah.
Right? Because the words on the paper is the most efficient way of conveying what we're trying to convey.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like if you just push them down that script, man, it'll be much easier. But like so the first thing I'm gonna do is I teach people and I try and get them to spend about 2 sessions just understanding the script.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. Then we go through and rewrite it for their offer, which doesn't take very long because it doesn't really matter, to be honest. And then we go over, we role play, and then they go out into the world, they do it, and then we just critique. Right. And then we spend about 8 weeks critiquing their calls and doing role plays. And so I need them to know the words on the page and use them, because if they just go off script, it's just going to go fucking rogue. So it's like try and push them down, the easier transitions. But like, as long like if their thought process is correct, like then people can throw them curveballs and then they can still push them down without saying the exact words, but the intent is there behind the questioning. And that's the real issue. That's the real thing. It's like, you don't have to say, is that having an impact on you? You can say, oh, and how has that affected you? right? Like that's a different question, but it's the same question. And people, so like the intent of that particular part is what needs to be conveyed, not the exact words on the script.
Yeah.
Right. It's just that, the exact words in the script, if you can do the combination of understanding and memorizing, that is a lethal combination, because then like you can go off script, you can stay on script, you don't have to think about it, which means that the real benefit to memorizing a script is that you don't have to, is that you know it so well, all you have to do is listen.
Yeah.
Right. And then you pick up on everything. So you probe on the right things, because the reason why people don't make sales mainly is, well, there's a lot of reasons, but one of the main reasons is because they don't listen properly. So they miss out on so much important information, which they don't clarify or probe on.
Yep.
And then they skip over certain things, and then they induce into objections because they're not really listening. So they say shit that makes the person actually give an objection at the end. It's like, well, that was your fault. You set that up at minute 14.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny with our script how, and the specific words and other things that we still are developing, and they will be different again and more refined and better in 6 months. I had a conversation with a guy today where he's like, we did a role play, and I said, oh, I don't like the way you did that there, but I understand if you've just started watching our content and you've gone through it from video 1 to video however many we're up to now in the closing code. I can understand why you would have said that, but he's like, yeah, I noticed that, and then in like some of the later videos you don't go down that path, and I go, well, here's why. And we continuously update and develop our stuff. It's the
only problem is I don't have time to continuously update and develop,
to go back and delete ones. Yeah.
But also, like, there are stages in just to talk on that.
Yeah.
Like, there are stages of selling, and some methods are far more technically demanding than other methods.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, if you're a business owner who has no intention of ever being the sales guy for your business long term, there's that law of like diminishing returns.
Yeah.
You just need to be good enough to get a job done. You don't have to be a master at it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if if you're doing jiu-jitsu and all you're ever going to do is just roll with the occasional person, you don't need to be a fucking black belt. A blue belt's fine. Like, you're going to be able to hold your own, right? But if you're a sales guy, fucking, you need to be a ninja, because that's your job. So, like, in the closing code, it's kind of like there are kind of like levels in there, but I should probably sort of make that more obvious. And it's like beginner stuff. It's like, this is good for people who don't need to be Jedis.
Yeah.
And then it's like Jedi stuff. This is the stuff that like can really, it's very technically demanding, but has a high level of efficacy when you can get it right. But if you do this stuff and you don't understand it, you'll make no sales.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you try to sell how I sell without the understanding of what to do, and because I leave myself so many doors, like, I mean, my closes, would that be appropriate? How would you like to proceed? Like, that's not a good close if you're a beginner. You'll fuck that up every time because you don't know where it's going to go. You have to know the answer to every way that can go. Otherwise, you're just going to end up going, oh, okay, awkward out, and then boom, follow-up ghost. There's just different methods and levels. Like, logic traps for specifically is a very, I think, simple way of objection handling that is a little bit combative, like the actual, like, pure, like, logic trapping. It's easy to do, but it creates refunds because you're making the person feel stupid for not moving forward because you just put them in a box logically where it's like, every answer that they've given can only have one logical outcome, right? So they almost feel stupid saying no. So you can kind of bully that person into doing it, sort of. But the way that we sort of do it using different methodologies these days, that's been refined over the last year. It's much harder to do, but far more effective.
Yeah. Okay, well, we're about 35 minutes in. If we could leave the guys with like a bit of a guideline for scripting, I guess a little teaser for the Congruency Academy, as you might call it. What are, if you could just like define the major parts of your script that you go through?
So it's called sales process. If you want to look it up.
Easy. We'll link it in the description.
But it's basically the problem is the first thing. So it's like the problem. You have to find out the real problem. That's first and foremost. Like, that's one of the most important things. It has to be the real problem. Then from there, you find out the what. What do they get when they solve that problem? Pretty simple, right? And then from there, it's the why. What is the emotional driver? Why is it important to them to get the what once they've solved the problem? Then from there, like that's all future pacing. Then from there, it's the consequence. It's like, what's the consequence of not getting the what, and how does that make you feel? And then from there, it's the commitment. So you make a commitment to change that the consequence doesn't become a reality. And then from there, you get the action, which is the sale. So that's the phases that I take people through.
I imagine we could probably, if we wanted to do a podcast episode and go into detail on each and every single one of those phases.
I could do like 4 hours on each one.
But we're not, because we'll be doing it in the Congruency Academy.
Yeah, exactly. So if you guys do want to find out more about this stuff, the closing code or whatever, you can join our Facebook group. And then, if you ever want to like, hey, is there any resources or anything, any help that I can get, any way that I can give you guys money, what you got to do is raise your hand, say anything, comment on anything, think about liking something, and we'll probably hit you up.
Yeah.
Now, we do about 6 live streams, 6 or 7 live streams in there a week. So there's lots of free content and stuff like that in that group. It's called the Closing Code.
Yeah. Where Marco's at a stage where he's in the matrix right now, where even if you just think sales training, you are now a lead. Like he's already got you.
I'm pretty sure I think he's close to 100% for the last 4 or 5 weeks.
Yeah, it's getting pretty ridiculous. We've created a monster.
All right. Well, we really appreciate you guys being with us, and
thanks for
make sure
being
you
with
like,
us
subscribe,
for
hit notification bells, do whatever it is that needs to be done on whatever platform you're listening to this on.
Yeah,
we appreciate you taking the time.
Thanks for bearing with us for a couple of weeks of not perfect audio and video as we're moving into the new office, and there's a lot going on in the background. So thank you very much for sticking through that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we'll have some cool looking backgrounds soon, I promise.
Very good content coming out in them quite soon. Thank you.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Put that coffee down. Coffee's for closers only.